We're rolling on recording, standby.
Welcome to the Art of Conscious Living. Today I have a very special show. It's about men empowering other men. It's the Mankind Project. And I'm very pleased to have them here today in the studio to speak about this and so much more. We have Chris Kyle, and we have Gary Arnstein, and Ashanti Brunch, and Dave Klaus. Thank you all for being here today with me.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Yeah.
Chris, tell me about the founders of this Mankind Project, when it started and what it's all about.
Yeah, thank you. And it's great being here with you, Victoria.
Thank you.
So the Mankind Project is a organization that started in 1985. It has been focused mostly on helping men really grow and heal and then live missions of service in the world. Kind of what we talk about as the organization is that we help grow better men. And it's a 501c3 nonprofit. It's international. It's an organization that's all over the world. And it's, the founders are three founders. It's Bill Kauth, Rich Tosi, and Ron Herring. And those founders came together in a kitchen in Wisconsin and really had a deep conversation about what they saw in the world at that time in the mid-'80s for men. Bill Kauth was working with a lot of women in the women's movement. He was really engaged in feminism at that time. He was a psychotherapist. And they sat down around this kitchen table and said, what is there for men out there? Men supporting other men. They looked at where are the modern initiation rites for men. We've read a lot about initiation of boys and young men all around the world. In our modern culture, where is that? Where do we have the support of other men coming together to initiate other men or to support other men? And so they basically came together and said, what can we do? What can we do? And they created training, which they called the New Warrior Training Adventure. And they ran their first training in 1985, and it grew from there.
Give me an idea of what a training would be. How are men empowered?
Mm-hmm. Well, the training really started as almost an experience, experiment, if you will, actually an experiment in men mentoring other men in an initiatory process, in our modern world. And so the empowerment is around their belief that we don't actually initiate men into modern masculine maturity, that we don't do that anymore, that we have a lot of teens running around in 45-year-old bodies, and that there hasn't been really a sense of let's, as men, support and empower and mentor and bring men into modern masculine maturity. And so that was really kind of what they started to see is, this training program can actually help men make that transition at whatever age they are into stepping into being a responsible, accountable, powerful men. Yeah.
And what would that look like to be accountable, responsible men in relationships to other men and their partners, women?
Yeah, well, the big part of it is really about men, particularly in relationship with other men. And one of the biggest things that they noticed, and that I still see today, is that men are still at a level of competing with other men to screw other men over. That there's a level of, I want what I want for me, and I don't want you to get it, or I'm going to manipulate or lie or cheat or steal so that you don't get what I need to get. And so part of the empowerment around responsibility and accountability and integrity is that I can look to you or another man and say, hey, this is the truth for me. I screwed up, or what are you doing? Because this is not right for me, rather than coming around sideways or screwing him over by manipulating. And so it's about really taking real clear ownership of my relationship with another man. And with women, it's about being more in integrity and honest and clear, speaking my truth as a man. And there's not a lot of truth-telling, from my experience with men, who are still stuck in old patterns, who are still in the teen or the little boy, and they're not really living with a deep integrity. And so we help men find that place of living in deep integrity and accountability and taking 100% responsibility for their lives.
Chris, let's take the example where men have their partner, their mate, and she is feeling very nervous and crying and emotional. And it's always about the man trying to fix her up or shut her down or quiet her down, or what does she need and what do I have to do? Is it really about that? So for the Mankind Project, what would be that solution instead of that, of having to fix her up?
Yeah.
What does the Mankind Project's answer to that?
Well, I mean, I think it's hard to say. There isn't really a Mankind Project approach to it. That's an organization that supports men for their own healing and growth. So it's hard.
Let me rephrase the question. What would be your idea of
thank you.
You've been exposed to the Mankind Project, so how would you work with your beloved?
Yeah, right. Because I think each man will have their own particular take and approach on how to do it. But I think what I see from my own life and what I know and what I've learned through my work with men and through the Mankind Project, I've been involved for 15 years. So I've done a lot of deep work. And to your point, the number one thing is about that there's nothing I need to do to fix my partner. There's nothing that she needs to be for me. So it's two things. One is, can I hold space for her, whatever's happening for her, whatever, meaning I'm grounded in myself, whatever's coming up for her, can I hold space in a way that she's bringing whatever emotion, whatever thought, and that it's not necessarily triggering in me about something that I need to fix, something that I need to do, or something that that she needs to change for me. So then I can really hold space, and that the work that I've done in the Mankind Project and outside the project is, wow, I can actually, she can be in her storm and whatever's happening, and I can be grounded to see, okay, got it, and I can really hear and experience what you're feeling. And here's what's happening for me, and then I bring whatever is happening for me.
And a lot of it, I think, too, is around developing emotional literacy for men. So that, most men have been taught to not show emotion, that it's weakness, that it's that's something to be ashamed of, to show emotion, and then that leads to not really being even aware of the emotions that we're feeling as men. And so we spend a lot of time on the weekend working on emotional literacy. What do I feel like when I'm angry, when I'm sad, when I'm feeling shame or joy? How does that show up for me? And so in dealing with a partner, it's critical to be able to say, first of all, where am I at? What's coming up for me in this conversation? Am I getting angry? Am I getting triggered by some, maybe a situation that happened to me 20 years ago with my mom or with a ex-girlfriend or that kind of a thing? Is that what's coming up for me now? And then from that place of being able to be present and grounded and clear on what I'm feeling, then I can really provide that space and that opportunity for deep listening to my partner, so that I can give her or him the space to bring in that kind of energy, to hold it, to keep it, honor it, and to accept it without trying to push back and say, well, here's what you need to do, here's how we're going to take care of this problem. It's really about respect for the partner and the space that they need for their energy.
So Dave, what I hear you say is it's about emotional intelligence, and it's about honoring your energy with your beloved, your partner. And it's not about fixing her up, it's just about witnessing and allowing her to hold the space for her and letting her know that. Because women need that to really feel, to be knowing that they can be anchored. And if they feel the man is a disconnect, and just because the man thinks that they're trying to fix them up, and then the man thinks he's connecting in that way, that's really not what they are asking for. They're asking for this, to be seen, to just allow them to process their beautiful emotions.
And without judgment, too, because when I bring judgment into that situation, I'm creating a separation between the two of us. And what I want in those situations is connection. I want to come closer, to remove the barriers to connection, and to reach out, not to go back into our corners, which has happened to me certainly a lot in my life, and in my, I've been married for 18 years. It certainly happened to me a lot in my marriage, But in the last few years, in working with these men and with the Mankind Project, I've found such a better way of handling things, and I think it's really impacted our relationship in a positive way.
Now, Shanti, you're doing some incredible, beautiful work of bringing this Mankind Project to the youth, which is very much in need.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk to you about this and what you're doing and how you started that and what beautiful success you're having.
So I'm a teacher, high school math, and I started in San Lorenzo High School. I was working there, and what I realized was that there was these students. I was first noticing a lot of the African American Latino males were failing my class, and I became a teacher to reach out to all students. But I was like, well, look, dude, I look just like you. Come on, let me help you pass. Like, I just want you to pass the class. And for most of them, they were smart, but they didn't believe they were smart, or they didn't believe that being smart was a respected emotion, a respected status. So I said, let me bribe you. Let me buy you lunch once a week. Come in, let's just talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and let's just figure it out. You teach me how to be a better teacher. And so once a week they came in, and what I realized quickly was that they didn't believe that they could be cool and smart. So since cool is more important for most teenage boys, young men, then I'm going to be cool. And cool means I don't carry a backpack, I don't do my homework, I talk back when the teacher tells me to do something because I need to keep this status. And so we began to think of strategy and say, well, could you do both? How can you do both? And for them, they were looking for a place to belong. They were looking for, how can I be as a young man in this school where I'm really smart, I can do this stuff. And I could see that they could do it, but they didn't believe in themselves enough. And so we began to just shift the idea of what does it mean to be a student for them. Well, do the homework after school. You don't have to carry the books home, right? Or turn the homework in the morning before a class starts and no one sees you turn it in. Like, just helping them reframe it so they weren't failing out of school because of this reason that was totally doesn't make sense to adults for the most part, but for them it was totally logical. That I don't want to look like a nerd. I don't want to look like I'm not going to get respect from the girls. And so that's been the work. And so when it started there, just really small, like helping some students pass algebra, I realized there was such a bigger need. And I've only been a part of the Mankind Project for 2 years, or for almost a year and a half actually. And but I had been doing work with young people trying to figure out, digging deeper. And so when I found the Mankind Project, I was like, oh, okay, there's something else happening out there. This is a bigger thing that I didn't even know about because I never had it for myself until 2 years ago. But I knew that there was something missing. I knew that when I was in high school, growing up in Oakland, there was nobody really helping me to dig past all my issues. So I just hid them. I hid them away, and I just buried myself in my books, and that became what I kept me strong, you know.
So it's about the attitude.
Yeah.
It's 99% of it is what your attitude is, and 1% of what's happening.
Yeah.
And in that attitude, you can be empowered when you take it all into account and you own it.
Yeah. It's the attitude and the belief, right?
Yeah.
Because if the attitude around the belief, if I believe that no one in my family ever did anything, so I'm not supposed to do anything, then that's my belief. Then my attitude is going to be, I'm not doing what the teacher tells me. I don't care about this homework, right? Because it's going to connect, right? And so helping them to just reframe the story. If I can help you push past the story and get you on the other side of the story, then I can help you not only be successful in math, but just in general, right? Because it starts with math. That's all I have a connection with them for right away. Then it builds to the rest. And that's how we've been able to bring some success for some young people.
Beautiful. Gary, your experience with Mankind Project is quite interesting. You've been having a empowerment of yourself, and you brought it into your personal life. Please share that with me.
Sure. Well, I'm older than these guys, and I've been doing transformational work since the 70s. I did the S training. It was really great in the mid-70s. I did the Hoffman quadrinity process in the 90s, which deals with family of origin stuff. And I've really been committed my whole life to healing myself. And I grew up in a situation where nice family, wonderful people, and I had an older brother who used to beat me up all the time. You know, he'd physically beat me up, he'd verbally abuse me, and I'd go to my parents and I'd say, you know, he's beating me up, or he's doing this, and they'd say, you deserve it. Or they'd say, you're lying. And I had done a lot of work to heal my family of origin wounds, but there was a piece that happened for me in the weekend that really changed my life. We did this little exercise, I'll call it shadow work. And in this exercise, I realized that in life, I am quite often not listened to. Or at least when I'm not listened, not so much that I'm quite often not listened to, but when I'm not listened to, I get angry. Because I wasn't listened to when I was a kid. My parents didn't listen to me. They said, no, you deserved it. You're making that up. And so I left the weekend with just another piece of myself healed, where I could see in day-to-day living, when people don't listen to me, I have a normal reaction to get mad, and that I had a choice about it. And that's really just completely transformed my relationship. I really feel like I'm starting to grow up in my 60s. Having done that piece of work.
Well, Gary, let's talk a little bit more about that. What was the pivotal moment when this happened in that training, that you realized that your unfinished business from your childhood was dictating how you were feeling as an adult? Was it an aha moment, or was it just a gradual process?
No, I was on the floor crying and sobbing and snot coming out of my. It was very emotional. And there was like an enormous amount of sadness about it, resentment, regret, but I was completely relieved, and I got that I'm someone worth listening to. That if someone doesn't listen to me, it doesn't mean anything about me. It doesn't mean I'm not enough. That I'm not good enough. So I think I'm answering the question, but it really has changed things, and I feel like now in my life I'm just really starting to grow up. And one of the things we talk about in the Mankind Project is developing the mature masculine. So often we think of men, and some men we know are wimpy, some men we know get angry a lot and scream, and there's a whole different type of masculinity, which we refer to as mature masculine, where you don't have to be wimpy and you don't have to scream. And I feel like now that I'm really kind of stepping into my mature masculinity at this late age.
Give me an example of what that would look like.
As
a mature.
A lot of what these men talked about in relationship. I was at the end of a marriage when I did this work 3.5 years ago, and I'm in a new relationship now for the last year, and we're committed to grow up in this relationship. And one of the mottos we have in our relationship is, who can soften the quickest? When we get into an argument, it's like, who can soften the fastest so we can be back in love and back in connection? And that's an example. And I can't imagine that would have happened if I hadn't have done this work a few years ago.
So the softening is letting go of your rigid points of view, your attitudes, just softening to being vulnerable.
Vulnerable, having an open heart. Yeah. Being in love and connected is more important than being right.
Right. And it's actually about allowing the communication to be open and flowing.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of the things that Ashanti brought up that's really applicable to what Gary is sharing is that we really take a look, in the work that we do as men, is take a deep look at the belief structure that's in ourselves as men. And there's a unique aspect to it for men that's different than women in how we hold our own negative belief structure, our own, what I call, it's a term that I've created, is our inner bully. That inner bully inside of us that's beating ourselves up with a whole variety of beliefs that keep us small as men, that keep us as an immature teen, that we don't grow up because we're still stuck in a belief structure that needs to be explored. It needs to be brought to light. This is the shadow work that we talk about that's based on Jungian work. It's been around a long time. But that we bring those beliefs to light, and all of a sudden, wow, I actually see how that's been running my life. How has that thing been running my life? It's just a small belief that's actually not true about who I am as a man. So as we begin to pull those weeds out, then what starts to open is a maturity and a groundedness and a sense that I'm not run by these beliefs as a man that I hold. And some of them are as simple as I'm just not worthy. I'm not good enough. I suck. Life is too hard. I'm taking on too much responsibility. And these men will have all their own examples. I mean, my biggest one is that I want you to like me all the time. So I'll do whatever it takes to make sure you all like me, and then that has an impact. That has an impact where I'm not in my mature, masculine, grounded, because I'm trying to manipulate and kind of make sure each of you, I find that what's going to work with Dave so that I can make sure Dave likes me. And Ashanti's a kind of a different guy. I'm going to figure out how to get him to like me. And that's my particular piece of what I've had to work on. That when I work on that, it's because I don't really like myself at some level.
So do you have to let that go completely, or is there a certain percentage of it that you can own in that?
Well, I own it completely, but it still comes up. That's the thing, is that it's not that it's completely gone, but now I'm more aware of that pattern as it arrives, and I'm fully 100% responsible and in ownership of it. But it doesn't mean that it still doesn't crop up, where I'm like, oh, there that is again. I'm trying to do a little some dance with Dave so that he likes me. And then I'll just own it. I'll own it and say, Dave, that actually wasn't the truth. Here's really the truth. I'm feeling kind of angry a little bit about what you said. And so that might be different than I'd be like, oh, no, it's okay, Dave. Don't worry about it. That's fine. And then that's where I'll notice and then go back into, oh, stop. And then give my truth, because I'm more aware of it than I was, in my 20s or 30s.
So it's living in awareness.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We do a lot of work around noticing the behaviors that we're doing as men. For me, my shadow stuff is around feeling like I'm not good enough, and the behavior that comes out of that is that I want to hide. I want to be quiet. I don't want to talk. I don't want to get noticed. And so, that's cost me a lot growing up as a teenager and into a young man, where I gave up a lot of opportunities, where I could have been out there, I could have put myself forward, and instead my internal belief structure had me holding back. Now that I notice these behaviors, be in an event and I find myself being shy in the corner, well, there's a tip-off that I'm saying, wow, what's going on? I'm having that feeling that I'm not good enough to be in this place. I'm not worthy of talking to these people. And with that awareness and that noticing, then it's like a light switch for me now. As soon as I notice it, I can say, okay, I've been here before. I know what this is, and I know what to do, which is to basically go the opposite way. Instead of hiding, I'm going to step out and I'm going to speak up.
So you were not born this way. This developed in childhood. So it's a childhood concern. And as an adult, we need to heal that child, that wounded child.
And embrace that wounded child too. I mean, as Chris was saying, it's not that we want to get rid of that inner child or sort of medicalize it, like we need to rid ourselves of these beliefs. It's just that we need to be aware of them, and over time really become friendly and compassionate toward our young self and our young beliefs, so that we can really integrate that child into the man we are now, and bring the joy and the fun and the play of being a child into our lives now.
So in doing so, the experiential will happen, where you're living in the moment and there's aliveness to it, and there's as I mentioned before, emotional intelligence, instead of being held back from this unfinished business from your childhood.
Well, absolutely. And I have two young children. I have a 9-year-old boy and an 11-year-old daughter. And, one of the gifts of being a father is seeing the world through the eyes of my children, and their wonder and amazement and the questions they have about things that I take for granted. Before I started really working hard on myself and looking at my beliefs and looking at my inner stuff, I think I was cut off from that a lot. I'd be too busy. I'd be on my phone, thinking about work, thinking about all the many projects of being a parent and taking care of young kids. And I gave up a lot of that stuff. And through doing this work, and we call it the work. We call it doing work, because it's not like we just do the weekend and have a great experience and that's it. It's really about ongoing work, every day. Everyday awareness and trainings with men from the project, more opportunities to help other men. But in doing that, I feel like I've come alive, and I feel like as a result, I'm a much better father, a better partner, I mean, a better lawyer too. I'm better at work. It really is showing up in all different ways.
Dave, are you able to see now that you can bring objectivity, because you can see that you have your unfinished childhood business of what your patterns that were established in childhood? Now your children, can you see that your children at times, can you observe them that they're going through what you were perhaps going through that you weren't aware of when you were a child? And you can bring that objectivity and you can work with your children now.
Absolutely.
And talk with them on a
I mean,
beautiful level.
you know, my dad's a wonderful man. He came from a generation of men where, you know, talking about feelings and what's going on was, you know, it's just not as familiar to him. I feel like, I mean, I feel lucky. I feel like my son is really lucky to have me now as someone who's awake and saying, you know, how are you feeling? What's going on? You know, I see, it seems like you're, you know, really sad today. You know, what's that about? What's happening? And, you know, I have a deal with my daughter where we go out for a walk once a week with the dog, and I give her just open space to just download all the things that are bothering her from the week, you know, and I hear about, you know, 6th grade girl stuff, and I hear about gym class, and I hear about the soccer team, and I hear, you know, and you know, she's like any other human. She has all kinds of things that are bothering her and disturbing her and maybe making her angry or making her feel shut out. And, you know, as we were saying earlier with the relationship, I mean, that applies to the kids too. I want to give them space and give them an acceptance of who they are and how they are. And that, I feel like that's the best way I can show them my love.
Fantastic.
Victoria, I wanted to throw in another piece. It's called the New Warrior Training Adventure. That's our major weekend program. And it's referred to as a men's initiation. And often when we hear initiation in our culture, we think of fraternities or gangs. But culturally, every culture that we've all come from at some point, hundreds or thousands of years ago, did initiations for men. And I've had the good fortune, I've been to the Amazon about 4 times, where I've been deep into the Amazon, into indigenous villages. And in those villages, the elders would come and they would take the boys and they would be initiated. And the thing that I was always struck by that was so different was people got along really well in these villages. You know, the fathers and the sons got along, the brothers and sisters, the mothers. So there was just a different level of relating. And personally, I think that it's something that's been missing in our culture. Like in the modern world, the initiation process has disappeared. And because of that, one way to say it, and this may insult some people, is boys are being raised by boys. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is creating mature men who can then be the father to boys and raise them into men.
And one of the things that the boys, young men are doing is, if there's no father in place, and even if there's a father, but the father is present physically but not present emotionally, so he just goes to work, comes home, and the young man comes home, he has no validation. He's not getting the positive and the corrective feedback. He may only get the corrective feedback. So he doesn't get any positive validation on, here's what I'm doing that is honorable and respectful as a man. Then he looks for the validation somewhere else. And definitely in our urban areas, in our Bay Area, we have a huge challenge with a lot of our young men seeking that validation somewhere. And they're going to seek it somewhere. If they don't get it at home, they're going to find it in the streets. And that's why the gangs have such attractive power, such pulling power, because you're going to get validated. Man, how you doing today? You look good, brother. What's happening? What's going on with you? Or whatever lingo they use in different gangs, but they are building a community because they're going to definitely ask you how you're doing. They're going to definitely check in with you. They're definitely going to be there for you. And so we have to find ways, not only in our schools and our families, to do more of that checking in. I'm raising my godson right now. He's 15, and I got to be really conscious because I'm dealing with teens all day to come home and be like, how are you doing? All right, sometimes I'll come home and be like, why is this here? Why is this over there? What are you doing on the computer? Like, and I find myself like going there, and I'm like, I didn't even see how he was today. I didn't even ask him how his day was. And so I think it's as an educator, I have to be conscious of it as well, right? So that when I come home, I have to do the work that I know needs to be done to support our young people. And for our youth, because they're going to eventually be the adults, And if the work doesn't happen when they're young, well, they're going to have to fix it in their adult age, right? They're going to learn how to do it. And a lot of our young people that I deal with at my school, they are emotionally unconnected. So the emotional maturity that we talked about, they lack emotional intelligence to be able to deal with their emotionals. When they're mad, they just go angry, and you're like, and they don't think rationally.
So fair to say that they're numb.
They're
living
very
in
numb.
numbness.
Yeah. They put the earphones in and they act like nothing matters around them. And when you make them take the earphones out to connect to the real world, if they're angry, they're angry. And usually anger is the emotion that young men will let you see. They usually don't let you see fear and sadness because those aren't respected emotions. So they're going to go to anger. Man, what you talking about? Why are you mad? Why are you talking to me? Blah, blah, blah. Whatever they're going to say to you, and you're like, well, why are you upset? Right? Why are you angry? I'm just asking you to go to class, right? Or whatever I'm saying to you. And helping them understand that I got to be able to learn how to track my emotions and use them to serve me rather than to hinder me. And
Yeah, and in 15 years of doing this work, literally seeing and working with thousands of men, one of the things I see is just most men shut down to their emotional terrain. Typically what we call is living in their head up, living up. It's like it's all head and rational, and so much of the journey that we do as men in this men's work is to drop down into our bodies, into our heart, and really find what is happening there, what's happening in my body. And a lot of times it's in arenas that are not comfortable for men. So it's in the real deep sadness place, or it's in a deeper fear that they've never expressed. Sometimes it's anger, because there's a lot of men that repress the opposite of what Ashanti says, a lot of men deeply repressing anger or rage that they have that they've never worked with. So what we talk about is bringing men alive, literally, in their emotions, in their body, to start exploring that. And it's messy, right? I mean, it's messy work, and it's so important to get that integration that Dave talked about. As I'm starting to now integrate my mind with my body, my emotional body, and now I'm starting to really come forward and bring more presence as a man with my children, with my friends and my family, because I'm seeing all the pieces of who I am as a man. Not just my headiness and my work, but also what am I feeling? What's going on? Where's this sadness coming from? Oh, I'm feeling this in my belly. What is that? So men start to get now, they're getting an opportunity to look more deeply at who they are in the full terrain, rather than this very narrow perspective of this is what it should be for me as a man. These are the parameters of success. This is the boundedness of what it means to be a man in our culture today. And we're actually helping men say, wow, it's actually a lot bigger than that. The terrain that you've held is what you think a modern successful man is way different than what our culture says. And so we help men take a look at that. What is it that's moving you? What brings you alive? What's your mission? What's your purpose? And a huge part of our work is then helping men move through this terrain of the emotional terrain, the belief structure, and then as they do that, then what is their mission in the world, their mission of service? What's their purpose? And then you begin to explore, and we all hold, as men in the work, we all each have a mission of service or a purpose that we can articulate that helps us to then bring our gifts and our energy and our talents out into the world to help others, to serve, to bring us alive. And that's a big part of the work. That's not just the emotional terrain, but how am I giving it out into the world?
So a very important key seems to sound like that it's about connecting to your vulnerability and not trying to be something that you're not, and covering it up, and covering it up with a lot of attitude and a lot of gesturing. And of course, as we spoke about, Shanti, the numbness, it's quite the opposite. When you tap into the aliveness in you and you tap into your sacredness of being open and vulnerable, the key word would be, what would the word be?
What would the word be?
Yes, vulnerability.
Vulnerability and authenticity.
Authenticity, absolutely.
And so much, speaking to Ashanti and Chris, so much of the power of the Mankind Project is that as we're taking on this messy work and this very, very difficult, challenging work, it's not for the faint of heart. But we're doing it in the brotherhood and company of other men. And so on these weekends, we'll have 80 men there, all working on similar stuff, all sharing their vulnerability, sharing the truth about them, and it turns out when I say I deal with feeling like I'm not good enough, and then 30 other men in the room raise their hand and say, I feel that too. I have that too. And then in knowing that I'm not alone comes this tremendous strength and this tremendous feeling of support, so that we don't have to turn to the gang, or for me it was the fraternity or the football team in high school. Those were my men's groups, and they were not open to authenticity and vulnerability. It was quite the opposite. But now we have this opportunity to be on Team Authentic, and it's this beautiful, powerful thing.
Well, crying, men and crying, showing their total vulnerability.
Well, it starts when they're young, right? Because I've been in many of stores where I hear parents say to their little boys, "Stop crying like a little girl." Like, this is like a 4-year-old little boy, right? Being told not to cry like a little girl. So they begin to think that crying is somehow associated to bad. It makes me not only make my mother mad, but now I look like a girl, which apparently that's really bad too. So all these things are now trying to conflict this child, who then grows into a young man who believes that crying is not okay. So I have young men in my office, and I ask 1,000 questions. I'm just asking questions. And I'll hit something, and you'll see them like their eyes are starting to glossy, but then they're going to fight it. They're going to fight it. They're like, "Man, I'm not talking about this stuff. And why are you asking all these questions?" And you know that you hit somewhere. I'm like, whatever you feel right now is safe here, is welcome here. But because it's so deep down repressed that crying is not good, it makes me look weak, it makes me look like a woman, which a lot of our young men have this idea that that's bad for them, right? Then they hold back. And I'm like, this is where you're going to get your healing. Because tears are like medicine, I tell them. These are your medicine right now, and it's trying to help you, and you're fighting it. And but it's work. It's not going to be a one session for them. Definitely in the youth. I definitely held back all my emotions. I was raised by a single mother on welfare in Oakland, and I was like, they told me at 7, "You're the man of the house." I was like, okay, what does that mean? I don't have a job. I can't drive. I'm supposed to do something that's manly, so I guess I just got to be tough, right? I guess I got to just pretend like I'm tough. So what do I do when I'm feeling like I'm not tough, right? Well, I guess I got to keep being the man of the house. And so I think a lot of our young men who are growing up with no father figure they're being told at these young ages, you're the man of the house, and they're trying to act that way. So what does that look like? Well, men don't cry, men are strong, men just get it done. And so we grew up, we have a lot of these young men. Definitely I did. I just went to work. I'm going to always be working. I'm either cleaning, I'm building, I'm fixing, I'm doing whatever. I'm helping my sister or brother with homework. But I'm never going to let anybody see that there's a problem, because I didn't have a father. My father died before I was born. So I just thought, okay, what men do. Men don't cry, and they do work, and they stay tough, right? So I held it. And so I think that what I've learned over the years when I became a teacher, realizing, okay, that's what they're doing. I know what they're doing, because I was doing the same thing. I was holding back, not letting anybody see the real me, because I didn't think nobody cared. No one cared enough to sit me down and say, "So what's up with you? What's happening? What's going on?" No one, ever. So I do it all the time. I ask these young people, "What's going on with you? What's happening?" And they're not used to it. They're not used to even how to answer the question. And so it's really the work around how to help them learn how to open up a little bit, so that they can get out of their own way.
Shanti, give me an example of some of the success stories that you've seen with your students.
Yeah.
Who were totally numb, and then they turned it around, and then they were able to access their emotions.
Yeah. So one young man, my first year teaching, I had them write their name tags, and he wrote some gang stuff on the name tag, and I was like, I went home the next day to memorizing the names, and I was like, this little boy that wrote some gang stuff on the first day. So the next day I went over to him and I said, hey, I don't really care what you do in your personal life. That's your life, but don't bring this stuff in my classroom. And I actually used an expletive with him, but I think he was clear. He looked at me like no one had ever said anything like that to him before. And I said, so if that's what you do in your personal life, that's beautiful. That's your business. I don't support it, but I can't stop you. but not in this classroom. And that day turned around for him, and I started inviting him out. He came. He was one of the first members of the Ever Forward Club, and he was always really sheltered, right? Like not talking about this stuff because why do I tell you my problems, right? Well, you don't care about my problems, and it just became a constant opening the circle for him to open up. And when they finally realized that it's safe, that whatever I say here is going to stay here, and that other people are being a little vulnerable, other people are talking about what's going on with them, and I agree. And then one day he just came out with some stuff, right? And he had his opportunity to just speak his own truth, and everybody was like looking at him like, because he never really used to talk, but he showed up. He showed up every week, and he just sat there kind of quiet. But one day he was like, I've been thinking about this, and it was really powerful. He was our first high school graduate, and that was back when the program started in 2004. And over again, young people come and they see other young men willing to let go and open their mouth, and then they feel the power. They feel the responsibility and the ownership. Like, oh, I can do it too. And it takes them sometimes 1 week, sometimes it takes them a month, a year, but eventually, once they get ready, we're there for them, right? Not pushing them to do it when they're not ready, but letting them know it's open to you.
And what is he like today?
He graduated high school. He did some junior college. There's a lot of different stories of young men who
Well, I
have
would
done.
say his attitude.
His attitude?
His attitude, his life, his disposition, opposed to when you first met him.
Yeah. Well, he transformed. Well, the gang he left alone, right? He got himself free of the gang. He's had his own life challenges since then. He's actually been deported. He got deported back to Mexico. But he is positive, and he's actually going to be starting an Ever Forward Club there where he's living in Mexico City, right? But he constantly checks in with me and tells me, like, here's what's going on for me, right? Because he's learned that it's okay. It's okay to speak about the challenges as well as the good stuff, right? Because then I can be totally open. And I can totally feel comfort in my own skin when I have somebody I can go to. I may not be able to talk to everybody about it, but if I know there's one person I can be like, this sucks right now. Okay, what's up? And then let them be able to go from there.
Gary, you mentioned that of your age, and you've seen from the 60s, the 70s, and to the present time. Where do you think we are in society now in the way of men relating to women and women relating to men, and the whole nuances of relationships and men owning their own power opposed to the 60s and 70s?
Well, I in terms of culturally, and I can't really speak for how we're doing in this country or in the world, but at least in the circles I hang around.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really primarily men have brothers. Men trust other men. And that's been really, at least for me personally, that's been a big piece, being able to trust other men and having that camaraderie. Not, my MO would be just to isolate myself. And now it's like, no, why would I want to isolate myself when I can hang out with these cool guys and do this great work? So, and in my experience, at least in this community, is there's just a lot, there's work, this work's available to men, there's other men's work available. People are taking advantage of it, and I think it's really helping people. I think it's helping them in their relationship to women, with their children. I think things are going in the right direction.
Well, of all the programs that you mentioned, and other programs from the 60s, 70s, the 80s, 90s, sure. How is this different?
Well, good. This is the thing that was missing. The other programs were all really good, and they were right for me at the time. The component of, the safety of being around other men and bonding with other men, connecting with other men, having that. When I'm on these weekends, I was on a weekend once, we were staffing, and it was snowing. It was 3 inches of snow, and the electricity went out halfway through the weekend, and we made everything happen. So it's like, I know when I'm with this group of men, anything's possible. And I don't always feel that way about things in life, but when I'm in this group, anything's possible.
Anything's possible in
like we can make
to
anything. Nothing's too big to get over. We can get through anything. And that's an experience that I take into my life, not only just on the weekends, but that's something I've learned from being part of this group.
So, what would you do with a man who doesn't know about this work, who's in your community, in your neighborhood, who is perhaps friends of yours, and he does not want to know about this program, he doesn't know anything about it, has no interest, how would you relate to him differently? And you see what's going on with him, and you wish that you could help him, but he has no interest. So how is your interrelationship with him?
Well, it generally, I'll just relate to him. If this is a person who's my friend, I'll continue to be his friend whether he participates in the work or not. I've already kind of gone through that with some people where, hey, you should do this, and I tell them about it, and they're threatened by it, or they just don't have any interest. So I don't really sever myself from somebody because they don't want to participate. And I've had I've had probably 6 or 7 people, that I've shared with go through the work over the last 3 years.
But what's really going on with you? They don't know about the work,
Oh.
you know about it, you're empowering yourself, and you're not able to have that partner, that male friend.
Well, I try not to, it's not my job to fix them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one place I go to, is like, they're okay the way they are, really. This might be beneficial to them, I know it would, but it's not my job to get them there, and I'm going to continue to be their friend and love them no matter what.
Great.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, because one of the things we've been talking a lot about the weekend and the training, and I really want to make this clear that the organization, the Mankind Project, is really about a community of men. I mean, it's really more than anything, the weekend becomes, the New Warrior Training Adventure becomes a gateway, and then into a community of men. So I really want to ground that each of these men sit in circle with other men. There might be 8, 10, 12 men that they sit with, some of them for years. I've been sitting in a men's circle for 15 years, almost weekly. And it's that community that has nothing to do with the weekend anymore, where I'm connecting and deepening and doing my work in relationship with other men.
So deep friendships.
Deep friendships, but even honoring some that I'm not in deep friendship with, but I honor them as a part of my circle and somebody that can support me and teach me, who I trust, because that's a man who's also doing his work and who's clear on what's happening in his life and his behaviors and his attitudes. And I even if I'm not in good friendship and relationship, I know that this is a man that would have my back if it really came to it. Like, I don't have to be friends with all of them, but it's my community. Does that make sense? So there's this sense of a communal brotherhood, really a global brotherhood, that is amazing. I mean, I can literally fly down to Australia and be put up all over Australia by men that will understand the grounding place that I come from, a shared relationship in the work that we do, to actually then open their homes to me, whether it's in New Zealand or South Africa or England or France. I literally can call up, and there are men that want to open their hearts and their homes to me because of our shared experience and knowing the depth of the work that we've done. It's powerful, and that's what's really shifting.
Has the training evolved and changed over the decades?
A little bit. It's interesting you say that. In 28 years, the core training, the New Warrior Training Adventure, has actually only changed a little bit. It was such a powerful weekend out of the gate that that's why it grew so quick. It was just this amazing, powerful experience that has been fine-tuned and tweaked a bit, but it's still this Friday through Sunday afternoon is basically how it was done in 1985, is essentially how it's done now, with some improvements. Just as we've matured as an organization, there's been a little bit of tweaks.
And those improvements were?
Well, I mean, I think the improvements are really around the training of the leaders. So early on, it was really more men that just were passionate and excited. One of the biggest things is there's a whole long training program for men that become certified to lead the weekends. So there's a level of maturity and experience on the weekends, the training of the staff. And then just some of the processes have changed a bit on the weekend too, just in terms of the depth or the clarity of the process, the teaching of it. So again, with the teaching and the context, leaders have gotten better at really creating the safe space for these men that come to the weekend, for them to share everything, to bring their rage, their sadness, whatever it may be. We create a safe container for men to go wherever they need to go to find healing and growth on the weekend and beyond and beyond.
Right. Dave, I'd like to ask you, if you were to speak to the audience, what would you like to share with them that they don't know about this Mankind Project? What is dear to you? What you
Well, I mean, the first thing I'd say is there's a lot of us. There's over 50,000 men around the world that have gone through this training, and they continue to work with Mankind Project. So it's really a lot of men. and as Chris mentioned, all over the world. Australia, South Africa, Europe, all over the place. So that for me, that feeling, as I said, with my shadow, I often would feel cut off and isolated and frankly hopeless. I struggled a lot with sadness and depression throughout my life. And for me, knowing that this work is happening and that there's so many men that are committed to a new way of being on the earth, that we want to serve a mission of saving the earth, saving humanity. I mean, very literally. Changing our behavior, changing our way we approach things so that we can heal our country, heal the planet. Obviously, things are not going well all over the earth with the environment, with political problems, with economic issues, tremendous challenges. But knowing that there are men like these three guys and so many others that I know through the work they're passionate and committed about doing this stuff, it just fills me with hope. And I used to have so much more fear around my kids growing up. What kind of a world are they going to grow up into? What's it going to look like? What will it be? And now I find that I just don't have that feeling anymore, because I have so much more confidence and faith that things are going to work out, because people in the Mankind Project, and I want to be clear, other people all over the earth doing all kinds of personal transformation work and spiritual growth work, that's what's going to heal this earth. And I feel really, I'm filled with hope.
And quite simply, it's about owning your own innate energy and not giving it over or not doubting it, but really claiming it and being it.
As new warriors, we take responsibility for our problems, and then we connect with other men to take action to create solutions.
Chris, we just have a few moments left. I'd like to ask you what you feel that you'd like to share that is very important at this moment in time with you.
I think what's most important to know is that I feel men around the world, so I'm going to focus on men, because I think women are leading us in our culture to a certain degree right now. And I want you to know, and other men to know out there, is that men are waking up, truly waking up to what's true for them, to taking real responsibility for their lives and the people around them, for their actions, and that there's a tide that's kind of a wave that is starting to emerge for men that is picking up a head of steam. As Malcolm Gladwell talks about, we're hitting a tipping point for men at some point, where the way of being for men is going to be around authenticity, responsibility, accountability, integrity. Powerful men that are willing to take on the big challenges of the day. And I know that the brothers and the men around me are committed to that in their own lives, with their families and with the communities. And I'm so excited and hopeful about the future, even with all these challenges, because we're one organization that's helping to shift and change the way men are in the world.
Well, I thank each and every one of you for your courage, your strength, your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria.
Wonderful.
And from the Art of Conscious Living, please do take care of yourselves and take care of others.